Two former Oklahoma police officers were convicted on Friday of second-degree murder for tasing a man more than 50 times. So this man was unarmed. Now, the former officers, Brandon Dingman and Joshua Taylor, in addition to second-degree murder, which is punishable by 10 years to life in prison, were also found guilty of assault and battery with a dangerous weapon by a jury in Carter County, Oklahoma, according to court records. So they're set to be sentenced on December 2nd. So now, this is an older story. This actually happened back in 2019. Now, the two officers first encountered the victim, Jared Lakey, on July 4th of 2019, and they were responding to a call where he was apparently acting in a quote-unquote disorderly way. Okay. So now, Mr. Lakey apparently would not comply with the officer's commands, and so Mr. Taylor and Mr. Dingman used their tasers a combined total of more than 50 times, which greatly exceeded, according to court records, what would have been necessary or warranted by the attendant circumstances. Now, the chief, Kevin Coley, testified that the officers had been attempting to cause what they called neuromuscular incapacitation in Mr. Lakey, but that he had kept moving on the ground. Well, what do you expect? He's being tased. Yeah, that's going to cause involuntary muscle movements. Now, prosecutors said that the repeated use of the tasers was both dangerous and unnecessary during their encounter with Mr. Lakey. So that's true. And when you read into the details that I'm going to give you, you'll see why. So Craig Ladd, the district attorney for the 20th Judicial District in Oklahoma, said on Monday that police officers were trained to limit taser exposure to 15 seconds or less, and to avoid simultaneously using their devices. But in the case of Mr. Lakey, he said the electrical connection from the officer's tasers lasted 3 minutes and 14 seconds. That's some, Jesus Christ. Now, Mr. Ladd added, they clearly failed to adhere to these safety guidelines. Well, okay, but it's totally safe for them, but not for Mr. Lakey, who they're obviously not concerned at all about. Now, Ladd also said that in Oklahoma, officers are only able to permit it to use the degree of force reasonably necessary under the circumstances. Now, you tell me if this is reasonable. They had tased Jared because he was lying naked in a ditch and wouldn't put his hands behind his back when they asked him to, even though it wasn't clear whether Jared understood what was going on or what he was being requested to do. He had never made any aggressive moves towards the officers, never swung at them or lunged at them or kicked at them. So he didn't do a goddamn thing. Yeah, he was acting erratically and was naked. And so they're like, hey, you know what I'm going to do? We're going to tase him. And we're just going to keep tasing him and keep tasing him and keep tasing him. Gee, I wonder why he died. Now, medical records also noted that the electrical shocks were a substantial factor in the death of Mr. Lakey, who stopped breathing and became unresponsive shortly after he was taken into custody by the officers. Mr. Lakey died 2 days later. So understand that he was murdered by the police for failing to do the one thing that police demand of you: follow orders. You must listen to everything I say. Whether or not he was even capable of following those orders. And look, also, they did a drug screen because originally the cops were like, oh, he must be on something. Well, they found no drugs in his system. And even if they did, what does it matter? Even if he had mental issues, what does it matter? It doesn't. It doesn't matter. Now, again, he did have a medical condition, but that doesn't matter either. So let me give you some details about that. Shannon McMurray, a lawyer for Mr. Dingman, said on Monday the former officer had planned to appeal his conviction as a result of his medical history. Citing a medical examiner's autopsy report, she said Mr. Lakey had an enlarged heart and critical coronary artery disease before he died. The report listed the officer's use of electrical weapons and restraint as contributing to Mr. Lakey's death. She said, it's just a tragedy for everybody. in my opinion, they acted within policy. Well, then maybe your policy is wrong. Ms. McMurray said the officers had been trying to avoid using other types of force, and said they were truly concerned for his safety and theirs if they had gone in hands-on. As they tased him for over 3 minutes. Plus, you had video that afterwards, Carter County Sheriff Deputy David Dugan came onto the scene and decided to, after all the tasing, put him in a chokehold for 40 seconds until he lost consciousness. But guys, they were really concerned for his safety while they were electrocuting him naked in a ditch. Now, Warren Gotcher, a lawyer for Mr. Taylor, also said that his client was going to appeal, saying, "We're very disappointed in the verdict." Who also pointed to Mr. Lakey's death as playing a significant role. His health in playing a significant role in his death. No one could look at him and tell that he had that much of a diseased heart. So maybe, I don't know, maybe you should think about that before you decide to tase someone for over 3 minutes, 50 times in a row. Maybe that's why you don't do that. Maybe that's really like, oh, you never know if somebody's going to have a heart condition. Maybe we shouldn't fucking tase them for over 3 minutes straight. Maybe that would be a great idea if we didn't do that. No, because here's the thing about the cops, okay? Police are taught that they're a hammer and that every problem is a nail. Again, if you're a hammer, everything looks like a nail. Maximum force. We must use maximum force at all times. That's how they're taught. And not just when it might be legitimately needed, because there are certainly situations where they might need to use force. But they're using it in almost all situations. At all times. Especially if you don't follow commands. And sometimes even if you do follow commands. In this case, though, I mean, look, at least here there is some justice. And that actually might have to do more with the fact that Mr. Lakey was not a black man. Mr. Lakey is a white man. Now, I don't think that should have mattered. I think that everybody deserves justice. But understand that justice tends to come a little bit more easily for people who look like myself. Even though, again, he shouldn't have been murdered in the first place, because he's still dead. But understand that unarmed black men who are killed by police have historically not received any justice. But again, I'm glad that in this case, Mr. Lakey did, because for one, what was done to him was completely inexcusable. Absolutely. And number two, this shows that police don't only terrorize the black community. Yes, they do so way more often, but they also terrorize the white community. And by the way, where's All Lives Matter about on this, right? I thought they're supposed to care about all lives, not just not just white lives. All lives. It's in their name. It's in the title. All lives matter, right? Where were you talking about this, Mr. Lakey? Silent. That's what they are. Because they don't care. Because the only thing White Lives Matter is a foil to Black Lives Matter. To spread the lie that, oh no, Black Lives Matter, they only care about black people. Not true at all. Not true at all. In fact, I've seen more Black Lives Matter activists out there defending white people who are unjustly murdered by police. And yes, where is the Blue Lives Matter? Where are they? I thought they weren't supposed to like bad police. I thought they were supposed to be in favor of good police. No. But again, they're doing it to people, and understand too that among white people, there's also a difference here. There's also a certain group that gets targeted more than others. And that's people who are mentally ill, who have mental issues, people with disabilities, all right? People who are deaf and might not be able to hear commands, things like that, and so on. They're often more preyed upon. And of course, poor people. So understand that all of this comes down to defund the police, okay? And look, I know it's not a popular slogan. I know it's not a popular thing, but when you have situations like this, where police are obviously not able to deal with people with mental disabilities, or people with any sort of disability, right? Or, you know, might even be, it doesn't even have to be a disability, somebody who is just, you know, in an altered state of consciousness even, that end up being unjustly murdered by police officers because, God forbid, they broke the first rule of police, and that is, you know, you have to listen to me, you have to follow my orders exactly, or I will murder you. And that's unfortunately what's going on. And so this is why we have to defund the police and actually take money from that, from these over-bloated police departments, and put it into things like, I don't know, mental health care, social workers, things like that. And I don't know necessarily, you know, what things will be the most effective in putting that money into. Maybe we should actually try it and see what happens. If you enjoyed this video, please give us a like and share with your friends. You can subscribe and help out the channel by becoming a patron. It's patreon.com/Jeff Waldorf, or you can become a channel member as well by hitting the join button below.